Let me ask you something. Out of all the characters that Genshin Impact has to offer, who is it that has declined the most? 4-star DPS characters are destined to become obsolete later on, so you can't really say that they fell off since they weren't even meant to be important for long. Maybe that random throwaway 5-star that Hoyoverse released then immediately forgot? Or maybe the character that hasn't gotten reran for longer than Frank Ocean has been on hiatus. Actually, all of those are wrong. For there is a character that had possibly one of the largest peaks in Genshin's lifespan, yet has become less and less relevant as the days pass. Someone who had all the hype in the world at one point, but fizzled out with each passing update. The character I'm talking about is Venti. When it comes to understanding the dominance of Venti in the olden times, you really have to put everything into perspective. He was the first 5-star to be released in the limited banner. He was also a poster boy, showed up as an extremely significant character in the story, and was a Swiss Army knife type of character. He could do everything from dealing damage to crowd control to causing elemental reactions. No matter what was needed, Venti's got you covered. It also helped his case that he was the only 5-star bow user at the time, so he was basically destined for greatness. And that greatness would last a formidable amount of time. Sure, Sucrose was there, but she was just seen as a poor person's Venti. And plus, why settle for a 4-star when a 5-star is sitting right there waiting for you to come and pick them up? It's not like it was hard to pull for Venti back then, since the game was pretty new, so you had a lot of ways to get Primo Gems. For nearly a year, Venti dominated the 5-star market. If you didn't have him, you were basically just asking to get bullied. Basically, everyone wanted him, not only because he was a pretty big flex to have on your account, but also because he was a good character to boot. Eventually, Hoyoverse released another Archon character, Zhongli. This didn't really affect Venti though. Despite not being the only Archon character anymore, many still saw themselves as OG players so long as their account had Venti in it. But then, something happened. In April of 2021, Venti's rerun banner went live. It was no longer cool to have Venti at this point since everyone now had the chance to get him. It's like if Fortnite out of nowhere decided to sell the floss emote in the item shop. The prestige was gone. Having Venti in your account didn't make you an OG anymore, but did that really matter? He was still a pretty good character, so not that many people really cared about it. And then Kazuha came along to change all that. You see, Kazuha had a lot of similar characteristics as Venti. Both were do-it-all characters who could deal damage, funnel enemies into one spot, and kill them with the elements. So when it came time for players to choose which one to use, they chose Kazuha. If you were there before 1.6, you would know how much discourse there was over Kazuha's existence as a character. Some thought he would just be a worse Sucrose, others thought he wasn't worth pulling for. I mean, why bother with him if the meta was already centered around Venti? Well, there's something you gotta understand about old Genshin. People were looking at Kazuha as if he was just another animal support character. His kit looked similar to Venti and Sucrose, but with a much larger cooldown. They made these assumptions since his character gameplay was already leaked. I genuinely don't understand how people looked at this and thought he was just gonna be another dude. However, when his banner released, people started to realize something. Venti's role as the do-it-all animal character was thrown into question as a new character was looking to replace him. Kazuha was meta-changing, and almost all the people who said they were going to skip him ended up pulling anyway. He was just too good to pass up on. His sheer ability of bringing enemies directly beneath you and his perfect fit on almost any team comp made him one of the greatest characters that the game had ever seen. Eventually, Venti started to fizzle out. The general consensus was, if you had Kazuha, there's no reason to use Venti. Here's the usage percent table for characters in Spiral Abyss. In 1.5, Venti had the second highest usage rating, clocking in at 92.67% usage. This means that in every 100 people that had Venti, only 7 didn't use him. In 1.6, his numbers decreased down to just 88.9%, putting him at third. Kazuha also entered the fray and was at 65.9%. It seemed like most people generally didn't care that Kazuha was there. If Venti does the job well, why would you even waste time trying to make Kazuha work? Now, let's take a look at 2.0. Yikes. Within the span of 3 patches, Venti had fallen down from nearly 93% all the way down to just barely over 64%. That puts him at a usage rate below Kazuha on his release patch, and it didn't stop there. 2 patches later in 2.2, he was down to 58.9%, and in 2.3, he was down to 27.3%. But it didn't stop there either. His usage went up in 2.6 during his rerun and allowed him to reach 76.7%. But as the patches went on, slowly he kept going down in usage until in 3.3, where his usage hit an all-time low of 7.9%. And today, he sits at an even lower 3.3%. So what happened? It's not like Venti fell off because enemies in Spiral Abyss were resistant to Anemo. Kazuha was consistently above 50% the whole time. The truth is, Venti had already been replaced by this guy. Kazuha could do everything an Archon could, but better. Venti just wasn't that viable anymore in practice. He's obsolete, got power crept, perhaps harder than others, but the bottom line is that his time is over. Well, if Venti isn't used in the game anymore, then perhaps he's still popular amongst the community. Though they may not use him, they may still like him, right? Well, looking at a 4.8 character popularity survey with over 3,600 correspondents, we can find a rough estimate of the percentage of players that are still fans of Venti. So let's take a look. Overall, the most popular character in this chart is Farina. For the other Archons, Nahida is the most popular, followed by Zhongli, and then Raiden, all of which locking in over 1,000 votes or around 27%. And for reference, even Kazuha reached above 1,000 votes. So where is Venti? He's over here, below 1,000 votes at around 750. This isn't even 25%. How do you go from being one of the founding fathers of Genshin Impact to not even scoring 1,000 votes in a popularity poll? You go from arguably the most recognizable character in Genshin Impact to being below official in popularity votes. The largest reason for Venti's downfall was Hoyoverse's lack of support for him. All of the Archons have 2 story quests, while Venti, who, mind you, is the first Archon to be released in Genshin Impact, only has 1. Not only is this just blatant disrespect from the developers, since they literally made second acts for Yoimiya and Sino before giving Venti a second story quest. You're telling me that Firework Girl and Short Corny Man were able to get sequels to their story before the Wind God actually got a story quest dedicated to his character. This is absurd. Not all hope is lost for Venti though. His kit may be severely flawed in comparison to other characters in the game, but his influence is still there. It's still possible that Venti will receive a continuation quest. Maybe it might come with the Mondstadt expansion right after GTA 6 releases. Or maybe Hoyoverse has just genuinely forgotten about him. It's sad to see one of the most iconic characters in Genshin Impact end up like this. Going from the top of the world all the way to being placed in the shadow of someone else. Venti has had a long journey, but just like the Traveler, his journey isn't over yet. I do believe that Hoyoverse is waiting for the best possible time to give Venti his redemption, and when the time comes, Venti will once again be at the top. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, and until next time.